All right, so this is a key on solving on the worksheet in which you have to solve linear equations which contain fractions. So notice all of these equations has at least one expression that has a fraction, that looks like a fraction. So let's go ahead and look at number one. So number one, we have this problem. So we have x minus 2 divided by 5 plus this fraction, which is 2/4, equals this fraction, which is 2x minus 1 divided by 2. So the first thing you want to do, the best way to deal with this is to multiply both sides by the least common denominator. And so that's going to help you later on when we deal with rational expressions in which there are variables in the denominator. You're going to use the same idea. So when you look at the denominators 5, 4, and 2, the least common denominator is 20, right? So we get 20 here. So the least common denominator is 20. So 20 is the smallest number that 5, 4, and 2 will go into. 5 goes into 20, 4 goes into 20, and 2 goes into 20. Now always use the least. It makes things a lot easier for you if you use the least. If you use 40, 5 goes into 40, 4 goes into 40, 2 goes into 40, but it's not the least. The least will always make your life a little bit more easier if you use the least common denominator. So the whole purpose, though, of finding the least common denominator is to clear those fractions. So basically, you want the number 1 as a factor in the denominator. And so if you multiply both sides by the least, then that's going to happen. All right, so notice, though, that I have two fractions on this side. So I'm going to put that in parentheses. So basically, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say x minus 2 divided by 5 plus 2/4. And by the way, 2/4 you could have reduced. That would have been what, 1/2? All right, so 1/2. So you could have written it as half, 1/2, which would have made the least common denominator 10 in that case. Equal, but I'm going to leave it as what you see. Equal, and then 2x minus 1 divided by 2. Now, the right-hand side only has one fraction, so I'm not going to put that in parentheses at this point. But I do know that I've got to multiply both sides by 20. Okay? So what I do to one side, I do to the other. And then notice, though, I introduced some parentheses here. So now I've got to get rid of the parentheses by using the distributive property. So I get 20 times x minus 2 divided by 5. So 20 times this fraction plus 20 times this fraction plus 20 times 2/4 equal, and let me leave this alone, 20 times 2x minus 1 divided by 2. All right, so you got to multiply. So basically what's happening here, right here, see how I'm multiplying this by 20, this by 20, and this by 20? Basically, you're multiplying every fraction you see here by 20. Now let's go ahead and reduce. Remember, the whole point of multiplying by the least common denominator is to get these denominators to be factors of 1s. And so if you're doing things correctly, that should happen. 5 into 5 is 1. 5 into 20 is 4. 4 into 4 is 1. 4 into 20 is 5. 2 into 2 is 1. 2 into 20 is what? That's 20, right? So that's 10. Okay? All right, now be careful with the next part. So you see how I have this 4 times, and remember, x minus 2 divided by 1 is x minus 2. Be careful because all of this that's in the numerator has to be multiplied by 4. So you need to rewrite this product right here as this, 4 times in parentheses x minus 2. So this right here mathematically becomes this. All of these terms in here in the numerator has to be multiplied by 4. So that's why we need to rewrite this using parentheses. Plus, now this one's easy because 5 times 2 is 10. Equal. Now the same idea here will be the same we used here. So this numerator, 2x minus 1 divided by 1, so this, which is 2x minus 1, 2x minus 1, both of those terms has to be multiplied by 10. So mathematically, this side right here means 10 times, in parentheses, 2x minus 1. And then we'll go ahead and distribute the 4 and distribute the 10 here. So I get 4 times x is 4x. 4 times negative 2 is a negative 8 plus 10 equal, and then distribute the 10. I get 10 times 2x is 20x, and then 10 times negative 1 is a negative 10. Combining like terms on the left-hand side, I can combine negative 8 and 10. That's 2. So I got 4x plus 2 is equal to 20x minus 10. Let's go ahead. Now remember, this is a linear equation, so we're going to bring all the variables to one side, constants to the other. It's easier to bring the variables to the right-hand side since 20 is positive and it's bigger than a positive 4. So let's go ahead and subtract 4x on both sides. Remember, 4x, what you do to one side, you do to the other. Make sure it's mathematically correct. So you're subtracting 4x, not 4, 4x. Then we're going to combine like terms. 4x minus 4x is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2, equal 20x minus 4x is 16x minus 10. Then to get the variable term by itself, we're going to, right now I'm subtracting 10, so the opposite is to add 10 to both sides. 2 plus 10 is 12, equal, this is 0, and you're left with 16x. To get x by itself, right now multiplying by 16, the opposite of multiplying by 16 is to divide by 16. 16 divided by 16 is 1. 1 times x is x. But remember, you must reduce. So 12 16ths, they're both divisible by 4. So that's going to be 12 divided by 4 is 3, and 16 divided by 4 is 4. And so the answer is 3/4. All right? All right, so that is number 1. So that was number 1. All right, let's look at number 2. Oh, and by the way, if you had rewritten this right here as 1/2, that would have given you an LCD of 10, but you would have still ended up with the same answer in the end, okay? All right, number 2. Number 2, we have this equation. Notice I have 3/2 minus 4x minus 1 divided by 3 equal 2/3 plus 3 plus 6 divided by 6. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 fractions, and the denominators are 2, 3, 3, and 6. So the least common denominator is going to be 6, because 2 goes into 6, 3 goes into 6 evenly, 6 is divisible by 3, and 6 is also divisible by itself. So the LCD is 3. All right, now notice this time I have 2 fractions on each side. So I'm going to put both of those in parentheses, just like this. 3 divided by 2 minus 4x minus 1 divided by 3 equal, and on this side you have 2/3 plus 3 plus x divided by 6. And then remember, the whole purpose of using the LCD is to go ahead and clear those fractions. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by that LCD. So I'm going to say 6 times this side and 6 times this side. Now I've introduced some parentheses, right? So I've got to now get rid of those parentheses, and that's the distributive property. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute both sides. I'm going to go ahead and distribute both of these terms by 6, distribute the 6. And so I get 6 times 3/2 minus 6 times this fraction, 4x minus 1 divided by 3, equal, and then 6 times 2/3 plus, that's a 3, 6 times this fraction. So 6 times 3 plus x divided by 6. Okay? Now remember, notice that each of those fractions that you see here are all being multiplied by 6. See that? All being multiplied by 6. And the purpose of that is to clear those denominators, meaning this. 2 into 2 is 1, 2 into 6 is 3. 3 into 3 is 1, 3 into 6 is 2. 3 into 3 is 1, 3 into 6 is 2. 6 divided by 6 is 1, 6 divided by 6 is 1. So you see you get 1s in the denominator now. All right, now let's go ahead and simplify what we can. 3 times 3 is 9, right? Minus, all right, now be careful here. See, remember our discussion earlier. 4x minus 1 divided by 1 is 4x minus 1, but all of that's being multiplied by 2. So I'm going to write it like this, 2 times, in parentheses, 4x minus 1, equal 2 times 2 is 4, plus, and the same thing here, 3 plus x is being multiplied by 1, right? So 1 times 3 plus x. All right, now, let's go ahead and simplify the left-hand side. Now be careful, because some students will do this. They'll say 9 minus 2 is 7. Be careful. You have to do multiplication before you do subtraction. You have to follow the order of operations. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute the negative 2 here. So I get 9. Negative 2 times 4x is a negative 8x. You see, if you had said 9 minus 2 is 7, and distribute the 7, you would have get a different expression. So your answer would have been wrong. And then negative 2 times the negative 1 is a positive 2. Equal. And the same thing here. Don't say 4 plus 1 is 5. You got to distribute. You got to multiply first. But remember, 3 plus x times 1 is itself, right? So this becomes 4 plus, and then that's just itself, 3 plus x. Let's go ahead and combine like terms. I have a negative 8x. 9 and 2 is 11, right? So plus 11. Equal. 4 plus 3 is 7, so I get 7 plus x. Let's go ahead and remember, I'm solving a linear equation, so let's go ahead and bring the variables to one side, constants to the other. Since the coefficient 1 here is positive, and that's bigger than a negative 8, let's go ahead and add 8 to both sides. I'm sorry, 8x to both sides. And so 8x and a negative 8x is 0. 0 plus 11 is 11, equal 7 plus 1x plus 8x is 9x. Subtract 7 from both sides. 11 minus 7 is 4, equal, this is 0, and that's equal to 9x. Divide both sides by 9 and reduce. 9 divided by 9 is 1. 1 times x is x. I get x to be 4 9ths. And so that's the answer number 2. All right? Okay, and then finally number 3. Let's go to number 3. So number 3, I have 3x divided by 5 minus 7/10 equals 4x plus 3 divided by 2. So my denominators are 5, 10, and 2. So I know very easily that the LCD is going to be 10. And so let's go ahead and multiply both sides by 10. Notice I have two fractions here, so I'm going to put that in parentheses. So 3x divided by 5 minus 7/10. That's just one fraction, so I'm going to leave it as it is without parentheses for right now. All right, so now we're going to multiply both sides by 10, just like this. So remember, the whole point of multiplying both sides by the LCD is to get these denominators to be factors of 1s. So let's go ahead and distribute. So I get 10 times 3x divided by 5 minus 10 times 7/10 equals 10 times 4x plus 3 divided by 2. And now we can reduce. So now when I reduce, I'm going to get 1s in those denominators, because multiplying by the LCD will help me to reduce this. 5 into 5 is 1. 5 into 10 is 2. 10 into 10 is 1. 10 into 10 is 1. 2 into 2 is 1. 2 into 10 is 5. Okay? All right, so now look at what I have here. I have 2 times 3x, which we know is 6x, minus 1 times 7 is 7, equal. All right, now remember our discussion. All of this right here in that numerator, so that divided by 1 is that 4x plus 3 that you see. All of that, though, has to be multiplied by 5. So mathematically, I've got to rewrite this as 5 times 4x plus 3. So that's what this right here means this. And now I'm going to go ahead and distribute to get rid of the parentheses. And so I get 6x minus 7 equals, and that's going to be 5 times 4x is 20x, and then 5 times 3 is 12. And so I have this linear equation. And let's go ahead and subtract 6x from both sides. And when I do that, I get 6x minus 6x is 0. And then 0 to negative 7 is a negative 7 equal 20x minus 6x is 14x plus 12. And then subtracting 12 from both sides, I get a negative 7 and a negative 12 is a negative 19 equal, this is 0, and that's 14x. And then finally to get x by itself, I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 14. And so I get negative 19 14ths equals 14 divided by 14 is 1. 1 times x is x. And then I cannot reduce this because the GCF for both of those is 1. But if I want to, since that's an improper fraction, I could write as a mixed number. So it'll be negative 1 and, 5/14. Okay, so either one of those is fine. But what I want to remind you is this. So just to remind you about this. So remember right here, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this right here. I'm going to rewrite this over just to show you something. So 6x minus 7 equals 20x plus 12. All right, so remember what I did was I subtracted 6x from both sides. Someone else, just to let you know, someone else could have subtracted 20x from both sides, right? That's still correct. Mathematically, that's a valid statement, a valid property. So 6x, though, minus 20x is a negative 14x, though. So you got to be careful with your signs. Minus 7 equal, this is 0, and you're left with 12. Right now I'm subtracting 7, so adding 7 to both sides, I get a negative 14x, this is 0, equal 12 plus 7 is 19. Now I've got to get x by itself, so right now I'm multiplying by negative 14. The opposite is divide by negative 14. Negative 14 divided by negative 14 is 1. 1 times x is x, equal, and remember a positive divided by negative is a negative. So I get negative 19/14, which is the same thing we got here. Okay? All right, so that is the key. So that's the key to this worksheet where you had to solve each of those equations that contained fractions.